Now consider your own education. You were taught to sit still, to receive information through symbols on a page rather than through direct physical experience. You were trained, from your earliest years, to operate in abstraction. Words about trees instead of trees. Numbers about distances instead of distances walked. Diagrams of animals instead of animals observed. This is not a criticism of modern education. It is simply a description of what it optimizes for. And what it optimizes for is not the same thing as what the ancient mind was built to do. There is a physical dimension to this as well. In 2011, a team of researchers led by Colin Shaw at Cambridge University conducted a detailed biomechanical analysis of ancient human bone structure compared to modern humans. What they found was striking. The bones of people living before the agricultural revolution showed loading patterns consistent with activity levels that would, today, classify as elite athletic training. Not just the bones of hunters or warriors, the bones of everyone, women, children, elders. The entire population was, by modern standards, physically extraordinary. And here is the connection to intelligence that most people miss. Physical activity at that level is not separate from cognitive performance. It drives it. Exercise is one of the most potent stimulators of neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus, the region most directly associated with memory, navigation, and learning. Your ancestors were not just physically active by accident. Their intelligence and their physicality were the same system, running together, feeding each other, never separated. When they sat down, it was not to scroll, it was to talk. Social intelligence in ancient human groups was, by all available evidence, staggeringly sophisticated. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford proposed what became known as the social brain hypothesis, the idea that the primary driver of human brain expansion was not tool use, not language alone, but the complexity of managing social relationships within a group. Dunbar's research suggested that the human brain is optimized to track roughly 150 stable social relationships simultaneously. Not acquaintances. Deep, reciprocal, trust-based bonds, each with their own history, their own dynamics, their own obligations. In a hunter-gatherer band, you knew every person in your group at that level. You knew their moods, their histories, their skills, their fears. You knew who to trust in which situation. You knew the political currents running beneath every conversation. You were, in essence, a constant real-time analyst of a small but extraordinarily complex human system. Now think about how many of those 150 slots in your brain are occupied by people you have never met. Celebrities, online personalities, fictional characters. Your social brain did not shrink. It just redirected its bandwidth. None of this means that ancient humans had better lives. They did not have anesthesia. They did not have antibiotics. They lost children at rates that would be unthinkable today. The physical hardship was real and relentless. But hardship is not the same as limitation, and difficulty is not the same as ignorance. The picture that emerges from the archaeology, the cognitive science, the biomechanics, and the anthropology is not of a lesser mind struggling toward the light. It is of a fully realized intelligence, magnificently adapted to its world, operating at a level of perceptual, physical, and social sophistication that modern humans rarely approach. The unsettling part is this: that mind is still yours. The hardware has not changed. The same capacity for total environmental attention, for embodied learning, for deep social attunement, for memory that layers sensation and meaning into a single retrievable experience, all of it is still inside you. It did not go anywhere. It is simply waiting for a world that asks for it. And the next time you stand in a doorway trying to remember where you put your keys, you are not failing because you are less than your ancestors. You are failing because your mind was built for a world that no longer exists, and you are doing your best in a world it was never designed for. That is not a weakness. That is the strangest kind of intelligence there is. Picture the last time you struggled to remember where you put your keys. You checked 3 rooms, you retraced your steps, you stood in the kitchen doorway feeling vaguely defeated. Now consider this. Your ancestor, standing barefoot on a dry savanna 50,000 years ago, could track a wounded antelope across 40 kilometers of featureless terrain, identify its gait from a single disturbed patch of grass, and predict exactly where it would stop to rest. No app, no map, no second chance. Just a mind so finely tuned to the world around it that modern scientists still cannot fully explain how it worked. But the real answer is far stranger than you think. Ancient humans were not primitive. They were not stumbling through a brutal world on luck and instinct alone. They were operating with a version of human intelligence so different from yours that comparing the two is almost like comparing 2 entirely different machines built for 2 entirely different worlds. And understanding what they could do and why you can no longer do it reveals something deeply uncomfortable about the mind you are using right now. Your brain has not upgraded since they walked the earth. If anything, in certain measurable ways, it has gone in the opposite direction. Let us start with memory. Not the vague, forgettable kind you use to recall a meeting or a password. The kind that researchers now call episodic ecological memory. In 2016, cognitive scientist Leon Gabora at the University of British Columbia published a study examining how pre-agricultural humans encoded information about their environment. Her findings pointed to something remarkable. Hunter-gatherer minds did not store facts the way you do. They stored entire sensory landscapes. A single location in the wild was not just a place, it was a layered archive of time, smell, sound, animal behavior, seasonal pattern, and social memory, all cross-referenced and instantly retrievable. Think about what that actually means. You walk into a forest and you see trees. Your ancestor walked into a forest and read it like a document. The bent stem of a grass told them something passed here within the hour. The silence of birds in one direction told them something was wrong over there. The particular angle of light through a certain gap in the canopy told them what month it was, almost to the week. This was not magic. This was a brain fully loaded with a lifetime of uninterrupted environmental data, applied in real time with zero distraction. You have that same brain. You are just not using it that way. Here is where it gets interesting. The average hunter-gatherer, according to anthropologist David Graeber and archaeologist David Wengro in their landmark 2021 work, possessed functional knowledge across somewhere between 200 and 500 distinct domains: medicine, construction, navigation, psychology, agriculture, astronomy, theology, music, law. Not shallow knowledge. Deep, practiced, embodied knowledge. The kind that today we distribute across entire university departments and professional industries. A single person, carrying all of that in their head. You would call this a polymath? They would have called it basic survival. The reason this matters is not to make you feel inadequate. It is to show you something that most people completely misread about human history. We tend to assume that intelligence is a line, and that line points forward. Primitive at one end, sophisticated at the other, ancient human at the back, modern human at the front. But that line is a myth. Intelligence is not a line. It is a shape, and that shape changes depending on what the world demands from it. 50,000 years ago, the world demanded total presence. Your entire intelligence was pointed outward, at the environment, at other people, at the immediate and the physical. Nothing existed to absorb your attention that was not directly connected to your survival and your community. And so your ancestors became, in those domains, something close to superhuman. Researcher Kim Sterelny at the Australian National University has spent decades studying what he calls the apprentice model of ancient cognition. His argument